Let me. I'm on Facebook. Okay. Okay.
Hey, Matt, it's time for dinner. It's time for dinner.
Not now.
Bedtime, Layla.
Not now.
Come on, Layla.
Not now.
Time to get going, Layla.
Not now.
Hey, are you coming to happy hour?
Not now.
Now, when you're ready, Hiscox is there for you. Hiscox, protecting business dreams since 1901.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for a great webinar that we're going to be doing with Hiscox. There you go. Sorry about that. We are doing a webinar on celebrating Hispanic heritage and Hispanic small business resilience, sponsored by our great partners of Hiscox. My name is Monica Garza. I'm Special Projects Coordinator here at the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and we are excited to have a great list of panelists to talk some very important discussions. Moderating will be from Hiscox, Karen Doyle. We also have Arturo Cáceres from the Latino Business Action Network. We have Norena Limon from NAREP. We have Agosto Sanabria from Prospera USA, and we have our very own President and CEO Ramiro Cavazos joining this panel. We're very excited to have everybody. Just so you guys know, it is being recorded and will be available to stream later on YouTube as well as Facebook. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A and we can answer them at the end. And we really look forward to having a great discussion. With that, I pass it to Ms. Karen Doyle.
Thank you very much, Monica, and thank you to all the panelists and all the attendees. We're very happy to have everybody here with us today. So we just want to open a discussion about the state of Hispanic businesses and where we think Hispanic businesses are going. And I think this will be very informative because we have some very knowledgeable folks on the panel today. So my first question for each of the panelists, and we'll go sort of in order, is can you give me a little, just a kind of a thumbnail of what you see as the state of Hispanic business today? And when I say that, I'm talking about both the growth of existing businesses and the creation of new businesses. And maybe Ramiro, perhaps we can start with you.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you to everyone that's joined us today and to our great panel members for your expertise and your advocacy every day. Thank you to Hiscox for your investment and sponsorship in our Latino business community. We don't take it for granted, Karen, so thank you to your whole team, Cineria, and of course, Penny and the rest of the team for your genuine partnership with our Latino business community. Well, the state of Latino business is a community that is used to overcoming adversity. Even before the pandemic, Karen, we were underfunded with capital, we were underinvested in, and yet this community was growing at 6 times the national rate if you were a Latina business owner, at 3 times the national rate if you were a Latino business owner. This is a community that pays its taxes, creates jobs, it keeps its head down historically and makes investments in expanding the economy without asking for help, quite frankly. And so when the pandemic hit, we realized that of the 5 million Latino-owned businesses that are in America, big business is driven by small business and our job creation. Half of these businesses did not have a banking relationship. And so when the Paycheck Protection Program was provided and invested in, that first wave did not really touch our Latino and Latina-owned businesses. About 6% of the capital that small businesses that are Latino and Latino-owned come from financial institutions, and yet more than 60% of that initial capital historically has come from family assets and resources. So this is a very, pull yourself up from the bootstraps community, and yet this is a community that we have spent less attention in providing resources for. So on behalf of the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, before I open it back up, Karen, we invested in working with collaboration and solidarity with great partners like Noerina and Arturo and of course Augusto, because solidarity and partnerships are key to limited resources and maximizing them. So we're very united. We are very committed, and this community is very positive about the economic turnaround post-pandemic at this time. So we're very optimistic that with your help at Hiscox, and of course with our partners here, that this is a community that is now more aware that we're interconnected, and a community that realizes that we need to get our fair share of contracts, of capital, and of course, the capacity and the training that's needed to scale. So Karen, very optimistic about the future in general. Sorry for the long answer, but wanted to share a little perspective on where we've come from and where we're going. And this is a community that has struggled the most, but is very resilient, as you said, and has been very innovative to use technology to expand their businesses moving forward.
Thank you very much. That was a very comprehensive answer, and I appreciate it, and very enlightening. Arturo, I'm gonna call on you next. And I know that you've been very involved with the Stanford study, which provided some very specific information about the state of Hispanic businesses. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that.
Yes, no, absolutely. I want to echo Ramiro's comments and appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all. Thank you, Karen, and the USHCC for all of this. Yes, as you mentioned, Karen, Latino Business Action Network, we're a nonprofit and we partner with Stanford. The basic concept behind what we do is try to take the best out of Stanford Graduate School of Business and apply it to the large and growing Latino opportunity across the country. And so one of the ways that we do that is by doing research, and we now have the largest database on Latino businesses. And every year at the Graduate School of Business, we have a big event in January where we release the findings of the annual report, and we call it the State of Latino Entrepreneurship. And so some of the sort of recent data, just to kind of highlight where Latinos are today as it pertains to business, Latinos are forming companies faster than any other group in the country. I mean, and it's significantly faster than all other groups. Latinos accounted for half the new companies formed in the last 10 years across the country. I mean, it's a huge phenomena that's happening, and it's across the board. Latino businesses accounted for in the last 10 years, they grew employment by 55% versus 11% overall. I mean, just to give an example of the current state of Latino businesses and where they're at. And so when we say we care about creating jobs and employment, well, then we have to care about the state of Latino businesses. You know, Latino businesses overall, you know, are growing faster at every stage. So our data shows that even when they're smaller, as most Latino businesses are younger, so they will tend to be smaller. If you compare them to other like-sized companies, they're growing faster. And then when they're bigger, they're still growing faster. But we do see a challenge. Once Latino businesses get to that 1 million mark in revenue and up to the 5 million mark, there seems to be a struggle where a greater percentage of Latino businesses in that range tend to fail. by 30% more than the average. And that's a big issue for not just for Latinos, but for the country. And so one of the things that we're looking at is access to capital. When you're smaller, you can find ways to get there, through using family connections, credit cards, whatever. And Latinos are very resilient, and we know how to make something out of nothing. That's in our DNA. When we get here, we start at the bottom and we work our way up. And we're clearly doing that as a population overall. And when it comes to business formation, we take that same approach, which is great. I mean, that's what you want in an entrepreneur. And it shows that we're able to grow companies faster. But once you get to $1 million, capital then becomes a huge issue. You can't rely on friends and family anymore, or credit cards. They're not going to scale you. And that's where the relationships to bankers and VCs and all of that comes in. And we do a lot of work at LBAN to understand that. We also teach Latino business owners at a course that we do at Stanford. And we work with different partners for that, including the USHCC. And we try to address those aspects of the gaps that we see, both systemically in the industry, but also within our community in terms of the lack of social capital. But just conclude on the state of Latino businesses. I mean, it is a very positive, strong story for our country, but I didn't want to sugarcoat the challenge there. And that is an important thing. And I want to highlight why this is important to all of us. If Latino businesses, all we are able to do is help them to get through that gap so that they become the size of average businesses in the US. If we do nothing more than that, just get these companies to the average size, that today would be an extra $1.4 trillion for the US economy. There's no single larger economic opportunity for our country. Anyway, so I'll conclude my comments by saying this is the right time to be a Latino in business, but there are challenges.
Well, thank you very much. And just to say no single larger, I'm going to repeat that, no single larger opportunity for our country. I think if we take nothing else away from this, I think we need to take away that this is just a really huge opportunity, and it's needs to be jumped on, for lack of a better term. I think so. Thank you very much. I appreciate all your comments on that. And now I'm going to pose the question to Norina, and Norina is with the Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals. So you have a little bit of a different, you've sort of two sides of the coin. One being employing, a business opportunity for Hispanics in the real estate field, and then also the real estate that building businesses and building wealth, and that allowing people to own their own homes. So maybe you can speak to that with respect to the situation with Hispanic businesses at this time.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having us, first of all. So the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals is a trade association with a mission to advance sustainable Hispanic homeownership. And Arturo, to the report that you guys released this year, you guys highlighted that real estate is one of the top 5 fastest growing industries for Latino small businesses. I do want to talk a little bit about our initiative called the Hispanic Wealth Project. So we see ourselves as an economic mobility organization more broadly. Our organization, after Latinos lost over 2/3 of their household wealth after the Great Recession, created an initiative geared towards tripling median household wealth by year 2024. And so one of the things that we do within that initiative is that we track wealth building opportunities, or how Latinos are faring with building wealth through homeownership, through entrepreneurship, which is the subject of today, and savings and investments. And all three kind of interweave nicely into one another. But I want to first start off this conversation by reiterating some of the themes and the ethos of the Latino community that Ramiro and Arturo touched on. I think one of the most beautiful elements of the Latino community, any Latino family, hears the phrase, hay que sacar a la familia adelante, so much. So what this means is that we got to pull the family up and push it forward. And so everything that Latino families do is for that means, is to pull the family forward, sacar a la familia adelante. And inherent in that is this entrepreneurial spirit. You know, Latinos are 1.7 times more likely to be entrepreneurial than any other group in the US. So all of these trends that Arturo and Ramiro talked about Latinos starting businesses at faster rates, about Latinos also driving growth in general, all of that stems from that ethos. And so I also wanted to highlight, we talked about Latinos, you know, growing businesses at faster rates than all populations. But I do want to talk about the unique role that Latinas are playing in this space as well. You know, there are 2.3 million Latina-owned businesses with or without employees in the US, representing 18% of all women-owned businesses. And Latina-owned businesses grew at a rate of 40%, almost double the rate of women-owned businesses overall. And then we talk a lot about, in our own research, we do a lot of work about on Latino employer businesses, because to Arturo's point, in order to build wealth, we want to make sure that we have businesses that scale, that have employees. And Latina-owned employer businesses have accounted for nearly all of the growth in women-owned employer businesses overall. So that's 93% of the growth. Latina-owned employer firms, by and large, are outpacing Latino counterparts. And so that's a really interesting thing to look at, because Latina-owned businesses were also disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, but definitely are driving a lot of the growth. I also want to talk about the issue of wealth building through business, through the concept of owning a business, and talk about the importance of scaling Latino-owned businesses. So if we look at Latino wealth overall, so the median wealth of Latinos is about $36,000 per household. So if you look at Latino-owned businesses that have business equity, so businesses that have assets, employees, they have a median net worth of $314,380 compared to a net worth of $174,920 for self-employed Latinos as a whole. So this is why, you know, this growth is so important as we look at the future of Latino-owned businesses.
That is very interesting. Thank you for sharing that information. Augusto, I'm going to have you go next. Just a little snapshot of your interpretation of the state of Latino business at this time.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. And I'm going to echo some of the things that Ramiro, Arturo, and Melina kind of highlighted. I mean, they've given us a great perspective in terms of statistical data and trends that we see in the market. I may want to approach it from a slightly different perspective, just because of the nature of what Prospera does. And for those of you who may not know, Prospera is an organization that for 30 years have been helping Hispanic entrepreneurs start or expand their businesses, primarily in the state of Florida. Now we operate also in North Carolina and Georgia, but we operate in that pre-startup, startup phase, idea, conception, etc. And so I'm going to come at it, my perspective from that point of view and that vantage point. There are thousands of businesses that we assist every year start their companies and kind of get to that step. And I feel that the focus on growing and scaling companies is a very important one, because at the end of the day, we go into business to create wealth and to provide opportunities for ourselves and our family. I think Lorena said it best. But we also have to understand that as Latinos, we bring different paradigms with us here to this country. And so we are so diverse within our own Hispanic community that the realities that we may see in one community will not necessarily reflect the ones that we see in other communities. And I heard this term, need entrepreneur, in a national webinar from a very respectable foundation that focuses on entrepreneurship. And that resonated a lot with what the work that we do in the communities that we serve, because yes, we are very entrepreneurial, and we bring this specifically from Latin America, where chances of you making it just getting a corporate job is not necessarily the norm. But most individuals who make it in Latin America do so by starting their own companies. And I feel we bring that when we come to the US, and we understand and we know how that works. And so that's kind of like a comfort zone for us in terms of building wealth and opportunities. But the great difference here in the US is that a lot of it surrounds capital, surrounds scaling, surrounds the financial system, which is something that we don't understand very well in Latin America. Remember, most Latin American countries are cash-based, right? And so we bring that notion of debt-free, no te endeudes, right? I mean, don't buy more house that you can afford and whatnot. And all of a sudden we come to the US and we learn that we have to go get that credit card in order to build credit, so that you can actually qualify for credit. And that kind of goes against everything that we've learned growing up. And so part of the struggle of scaling and growing is the fact that from the minute that they start, they don't understand how the financial system works. And so that can create a lot of hurdles for you once you reach that $1 million mark, like Arturo mentioned. I mean, you've made it, right? I mean, bootstrapping it, getting friends and families to contribute, but there gets to a point where you actually have to bring a financial partner to the equation, and we struggle with that for several reasons. First of all, we don't understand it, and we tend to shy away from things that we don't understand. And second, because we don't want to give out ownership. Norina made it very clear, we want to provide something that we want to leave our kids in a better position than we are ourselves. But that giving away of ownership is something that we don't feel very comfortable with. So equity capital or investment or angel investors is something that we don't know. And so again, that financial education, that understanding of how the financial system works in the US, for us as an organization that helps those startups, is fundamental to making sure that those businesses eventually can grow and scale. And we saw that during the pandemic. I mean, most of our clients weren't ready to even get the basic relief programs that the government was trying to provide to them. We didn't have the basic bookkeeping abilities, the basic forms, the basic occupational licenses that you needed in some of those local relief programs that existed. So I know that us as an organization, we had to completely pivot our model of serving clients by just focusing on making sure that they could get access to that basic relief programs that were available to them. And it wasn't, I think Ramiro mentioned, but it wasn't until the second version of the PPP program came along that more Latino entrepreneurs were ready to get that relief that they so desperately needed. I mean, we surveyed our clients all throughout the pandemic. And one statistic that actually stood out for me was that within 6 months of the pandemic, 88% of Latino businesses that we surveyed through our client network had already reopened their companies. And so for those of you who we appropriately say that Latinos are in the forefront of getting the US back in business, I mean, that proves it to me, right? 88% of businesses had to figure out how to reopen in the safest way possible, but they needed to make it happen, I mean, they weren't gonna, that's their livelihood. And so I think that the state of Latino entrepreneurs is very promising, and is gonna continue to be promising. I mean, we saw it in the Great Recession of 2008. I remember a lot of data coming from the USHCC showing that but for the resilience of the Latino entrepreneurs, we would have been in that mess for a lot longer. I see this as a repeat of that. I mean, I see that our Latino entrepreneurs are going to once again lead the effort to get us through this pandemic, and I'm obviously extremely proud for that. So,
Excellent, excellent, great. Thank you so much. And I agree, everything that I've been reading too, I've been seeing it's the entrepreneurs, the Latino entrepreneurs that are gonna lead the way to getting back to some kind of normal. So my next question is about risks and challenges. And we've all seen more challenges than we ever thought we'd see in our lifetime, probably in the last 2 years. And you know, as many of you have said, we're starting to, in a lot of ways, to come back from those. So my question is, what are the challenges specifically faced by Hispanic entrepreneurs going forward in the next, maybe say 2 to 3 years, would you say? And this time I will start with Arturo on this one.
Yes, hi, thanks. Yes, I think broadly speaking, there's two challenges for any population that's coming up, like we are, like Latinos. There's always going to be the issue of the lack of social capital and connections. And so for a large population, we have the most undereducated parents, but the children are not as undereducated, which is an indication of our ascendancy, that we are making progress. And year after year, you can see that. But for such a large population, we don't have enough of us that are in professional levels and that have the social capital around business and entrepreneurship or those connections. And so that will continue until we develop that. But I do think organizations like the USHCC, NAREP, Prospero, a bunch of others are working on that. And I think to the extent that we can all start to connect our networks together, it also starts to increase the level of social capital amongst our community. And so I do see that there's opportunities in this, but that to me is going to be a big challenge in general, and in particular around access to capital, that there's a big lack of social capital for that, as was mentioned. The other challenge is the structural or even implicit biases that could exist within institutions or corporations. And I think the two things kind of go hand in hand, and addressing both is going to be important. In part, I do think as a community, we will develop a stronger voice to advocate for changes that will help. And when they help us, they will help everyone. And I think it will be good for all small businesses as Latinos start to use their voice to change some of these structural impediments and address some of the implicit bias. But some of the specific things that we've seen in our data, and even examples. So one of them is we teach a class at Stanford for Latina business owners. And we now have about 800 graduates of that program. And every year it grows. When the pandemic hit, PPP was just a mess for all companies. They were struggling to figure out how to do it, for Latino companies in particular. When we saw that happening with our network, and they were sharing ideas with each other, we did what we could to bring in experts, because we knew nothing about PPP, but we had access. And they also, as some of them learned, because some of them figured out what works, what doesn't work, they're sharing it. We have a network where they're communicating, and we're on that communication with them. We could see them developing knowledge around that. And then we formalized that to have webinars to just make sure they all knew it. And so one of the interesting statistics that we looked at is we compared all small businesses of the same size as the companies that are in our network. And I think it was something like only 28% were successful in that first round. For Latino businesses, it was much worse. Less than 18% were successful in that first round. Companies that compare in size to the companies in our network. In our network, 82% were successful. I mean, it was off the charts. And to me, that is the value of social capital. That's what made the difference. And I want to stress this. It's not that Latinos are not good at social capital. We're the best population at that because we have to be. in our home countries, we can't count on the government or the institutions to have our back. So we learn how to get ahead by ourselves, starting with our families, then the networks that extend outwards from our family. And so that's a very powerful thing. That's how we get from wherever we are. I'm from a village in Mexico. My parents had literally no education in Mexico. We got here because they had tremendous social capital. That's how they got all those kids across that border safely, documented or not. But they did it, and Latinos do that all the time, right? So we have tremendous social capital, but now we need to develop it at this level. And the other statistics that we have seen in our data is when it comes to getting a bank loan, Latino firms on average are growing faster, and Latino firms on average have equal or slightly better credit rating to comparable companies. Like, you can't compare them to all companies because Latino companies are smaller. So if you compare them to the smaller companies, they actually have better credit rating and they're growing faster. Yet they're 30 to 60% less likely to get a loan from a major bank. In California, they're 90% less likely to get a loan from a major bank. And I think it goes back to the same two issues: the lack of social capital around how do you do that? How do you establish credit? How do you connect with the financial institutions? How do you navigate that? Who are the people that you need to talk to? But also, we share this data also with the large banks who support us, by the way, and they pay for our research effectively. And we have conversations with them about it, and they're pretty open about wanting to make change, because they realize that they're giving loans to people that are more risky, that something in their process is actually not good for them. And so again, I go back to, as we develop a stronger voice, as we get more of our people in these positions to have these conversations, we can affect institutional change that opens up much more pathways. And again, I think this doesn't just benefit Latinos. Latinos are so big now that anything that benefits Latinos is going to impact our country in a positive way. And so I do think that a lot of goodness can happen as our population ascends and confronts, these challenges and makes them into opportunities for everyone.
Excellent, thank you. I have one question for you, Arturo, regarding the course that you said that you have at Stanford for Hispanic entrepreneurs. Is that a online course, or is it only in person?
Yeah, so the way that it works, people need to run their companies and they come from across the country. So the way that it works pre-pandemic is they come to Stanford for 2 days, and then they get to know us, they get to know the professors, and they're Stanford Business School professors that teach the class. And then they go back home to run their companies. And for 9 weeks, every week, they're on a call with us so that they're building a network with each other. At the end of the program, they come back to Stanford, and we match them up during the program with a mentor. We also match them up with capital providers. And at the end, they come back to actually meet with and pitch to different capital providers, be they banks or VCs or angel investors that are part of our network. And we also have a graduation ceremony. And once they graduate, then they join our alumni base. And that alumni base is, I think, by the end of this year, is going to be pushing 1,000 people across the country that have been through this program. And again, the goal is to figure out how to help Latino companies cross that chasm from 1 million to 5 million, and then just to continue growing once they're there. And so that's why we stay connected with them, to continue to learn from them. And whatever we learn, we share it with everyone, because again, this isn't, we're focused on Latinos because that's the biggest opportunity for America. And that's the most acute situation right now for any group in the country. Latinos are in many ways struggling with the biggest issues. And whenever you see a challenge in our country, Latinos are going to be having to figure out a way to overcome it, like the pandemic, right? We see that first and foremost. And so by understanding this population and figuring out how to address those challenges and convert them into opportunities, it literally helps everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I thought that course would be of interest to some of the people that are with us today. So I wanted to get some specific.
And I would welcome
appreciate
anyone
it.
to apply. Thank you for that. Yes,
Mhm.
people need to apply, but we are looking for companies that are representative of Latinos across the country. And just because it's Stanford, I don't want anyone to be intimidated by that at all. I mean, and we make sure of that. It's a Latino familia that we're building, and you will feel welcome and fully a part of it. Some of the people in our class, they have never went to college. Some of them never graduated high school. And it's beautiful to watch them when we do the graduation ceremony, right? Because for many of them, it's the first time they went to like a higher ed school.
Yeah. Thank you. Norena, do you want to speak a little bit about challenges?
Sorry about that. I couldn't find my unmute button. Well, I first want to commend Arturo for your program. And it is such a fantastic initiative and program that I've seen firsthand. I've seen many of our leaders go through the program and have it be absolutely pivotal and life-changing. I've been to your graduation ceremony and seeing the difference that you are making for Latino business owners across the country. So just want to commend your efforts and proud to be a part of this amazing coalition of leaders working to advance the needs of our Latino business owners. So I wanted to just echo what has been said. I think we're in 2021. The pandemic is still not entirely behind us, but we feel like we're more on the way out than in. And obviously, all of the conversations have been around the pandemic, the impact of the closures that had on Latino businesses. But I would say that the pandemic was situational, and there are more inherent problems that preceded the pandemic and will continue after the pandemic. And Arturo, you touched, I think, on one of the biggest ones, which is access to capital. The 2021 Small Business Credit Survey found that among those that did receive credit approval, only 20% of Latinos received the full amount of the loan that they applied for, compared to 40% of the non-Hispanic white population. And due to these challenges, what we found is that Latino small businesses are most likely to use non-traditional sources of capital to fund their businesses. And that poses risks. That poses risks in the scalability of a business, in the stability of a business. And we found that Latino small business owners are more likely to rely on personal funds, so at 25% as their main funding source, compared to non-Hispanic white business owners at 17%. And in line with these trends, we did a survey this year for the Hispanic Wealth Project, and we found that Latino business owners were twice as likely as Latino non-business owners to report carrying a balance on their personal credit cards, suggesting that there might be some funding of their businesses using credit cards. So all of that just, I think it creates a fire under our belly on the work that we need to do in order to get the word out and to create these connections that Arturo was talking about. I completely agree. Latinos are the best at networking. Growing up in a region of California, of the Inland Empire, where an entire region of Mexico all lived. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, and that's exactly how it happened. So I agree, but I think that's why the work that Ramiro, you guys, Arturo, Augusto, the work that all of you guys do in order to create that professional network that has information, because I think more than anything, it's information. It's not just information, getting information and learning about it, but it's knowing another person in your network that's familia that also has applied for it and has done it. There is something about creating those mentorship and roadmaps for people that these professional organizations, such as the ones represented on the screen, provide for the community. But definitely a lot of money in order to ensure that we're scaling our businesses adequately and safely, I think is one of our biggest challenges.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. Augusto. Challenges?
Yeah, again, and I think that in the effort to not have to repeat everything that was said, which is completely accurate, again, I'm gonna try to look at this from our perspective on the ground, helping provide that hand holding that we do to those small businesses. And I wish that Prospera were in all 50 states and available to all communities. The reality is that we're not. I mean, we're only in 3 states. And I know through the network of the USHCC, the Hispanic chambers across the country are doing as best as they can. But I do think that they need more resources. I mean, and I see that as a challenge. You talk about networks and Latinos not necessarily having the network as well. Who provide those networks? Those are the local Hispanic chambers. And unfortunately, many of them across the country, I was able to meet many of our great leaders in Vegas during the convention, and they're struggling. And they shouldn't be. That's kind of what we have to figure out as a community. And so they're trying to do as best as they can to try and help their members and live with scarce resources themselves to try to sustain their models and their programming. And so I think I see that as a challenge. We need to make sure that we empower not only the USHCC and Ramiro's team, but also those local Hispanic chambers that are doing the work, boots in the ground, so to speak, and helping those small companies. So that would be issue number 1. Issue number 2 on the capital piece, again, I think that a lot of what we see, for example, in Prospera, again, and we serve thousands of businesses, is many small businesses think that what they need is capital. They're just not ready to receive that capital. And again, it starts from understanding bookkeeping, how a dollar comes into your company and how a dollar goes out. Keeping tabs on all your records, setting up the right legal structure when you start, making sure that you have all the licenses and permits and everything else compliance-wise that your local government and the IRS and other government entities require you to have. Because the fact that you can make it work with your credit card as you start off doesn't mean that you're going to be able to scale and grow your company afterwards. So, we can keep saying that the banks are not approving the loans and whatnot, but at the end of the day, banks are not going to change their model. I mean, they're not going to give away money. They're not going to, they're at the end of the day, they have to make money, right? And they have to ensure that we have the ability to repay those loans. And so I think if we start educating our clients and making sure that they have the resources when they start through CDFIs, through other programs that bring that flexible capital at the beginning, I think it's going to be much easier for them to be confident enough to be able to go to the larger financial institutions to get that capital to grow and scale. If we want to address the problem once they're scaling, I think it's almost too late because you have to do a lot of work that we didn't do at the beginning. So I would encourage everyone to hopefully help our clients understand how the financial system works and really involve the CDFIs. I mean, I've spoken to our friend Monica Mantilla many times. I mean, and she's trying to get capital at the larger levels. But how many Hispanic serving CDFIs do we have at a national level? I mean, not many. Ramiro could probably count those with the, con los dedos de la mano. And that's a shame as well. We need to be able to do better in those initial stages to get some flexible capital for those Hispanic-owned businesses so that they don't have to max out their credit cards like Marina said. So again, I think that, access to networks, very important, empowering our Hispanic chambers and our other organizations that are serving Hispanic-owned businesses. And then access to capital, but real education on how capital works and all that. And then the last one that I'm going to throw at you, and I think this is going to be good for Ramiro as well, is access to procurement and contracts. I mean, again, the USHCC, the local Hispanic chambers are doing their part, but making sure that we take a hard look at how can we get more of our Latino businesses ready to benefit from those bigger contracts. I mean, we all know that in order for you to do business with government, cash flow is extremely, extremely important. And unfortunately, we don't have those needs. So if you have to get a contract with the government and then wait for 180 days for them to pay you, when you're making payroll on a weekly basis, you know, it doesn't work. When the government is asking you to have bonding in an amount that you don't have access to, then, you know, it doesn't matter if they put out there in their newsletter that they're looking for Latino businesses. That's going to be a barrier that is going to be very difficult for our Latino businesses to navigate. So we need to take hard looks at the system, how it works, and how it prevents smaller companies to have access to those opportunities. So I'm going to leave you with those three challenges, and I think we can do. We put together. We can help a lot of our companies navigate those, but I do see those as challenges.
Thank you, Augusto. I appreciate that. I want to leave some time for questions, and I was hoping to get another couple more rounds in, but I'm going to have to. I think we could probably talk all day, right? But unfortunately, we all have to go back to work. So I have one question I'm going to just run by each of the panelists for a quick sound bite, if you will, and that is, what advice would you give a Hispanic small business owner just starting out right now? And Romero, I will start with you.
But no, thank you, Karen. And we have such a great panel. I've enjoyed listening to each of them, and I'm just the eye candy here today, Karen. I think seriously, we need to ask for help.
I thought that was me.
Sorry, Karen. That's right. You have better hair than I do. You know, Karen, we need to ask for help as Latino-owned businesses. We don't ask for help enough. Arturo, I know Norina and Augusto have just touched on that, is that we get the job done. DNA doesn't lie. We're natural entrepreneurs, and we're very effective, and we're competitive, and we just get the job done. But we need to join the local chamber. You need to join NAREP. You need to join Prospera. You need a family that can be your ally. And our job is to do the blocking and tackling. Augusto kind of teed it up for me. We need to, as a U.S. Hispanic chamber, fight for more access to capital, fight for more capacity building, fight for contracts. You know, people want more business, and we're not getting our fair share of the government business or the private sector business. And so as we build our confidence, we need to also accept rejection as part of the secret to success. If you don't get that first contract or that first loan, find out how you can be better the next time. Get your business plan in place. Ask for the help from Prospera, from NAREP, and of course from LBEN. Join these great organizations because they build that network and that family of advisors for you. That would be my best advice, is ask for help and join join an organization that can make you stronger.
What Ramiro said.
Excellent. Okay. Norina agrees. Arturo, you gonna third that motion, Arturo?
I totally agree with that. Yes.
Okay. Augusto? Excellent. Okay, we're all in agreement on that. Then that is perfect. Monica, do you have some questions for our panelists that have come in?
Yes, we do. I have one question that came in saying, can you elaborate on the social capital concept? So that's open to anybody who wishes to take on that question.
So I can give, I think social capital is around knowledge, just knowing how systems work. And then it's also about connections and having an ability to get connected to the right people. And the way that can be built as it pertains to business is, as was mentioned by Ramiro and others, to participate in these professional networks And I think there's sort of two broad concepts when you're a Latino thinking about that. There are the overarching industry networks or pro-business networks. And I think those are valid, and Latinos should join those and have a voice within those and learn from those. But I think it's also of particular importance for our community to also, in addition, join Latino professional networks, because that will generate immense social capital within our community. And that will be extremely powerful, not just for the participants. And one of the reasons for that is when any group gets together with people of their similar background, and the same will happen for Latinos, they're able to build connections that are much deeper, and those connections will translate into real opportunities, right? Because the way you leverage a network is you learn something and you meet someone. 6 months later, 7 months later, are they gonna go out of their way to make the connection for you or to make the introduction for you? And within a Latino network, you're more likely to have that benefit come back. But I'm not saying to join Latino networks exclusively, but I do think that those are crucial for us as a population that is ascending.
Awesome. Thank you, Arturo. Another question we have is, can you share data or your thoughts on undocumented business owners? I'm a DACA recipient, and entrepreneurship has helped open doors for me to opportunities I never thought I could have. Anybody wish to take on that question?
I mean, I see Augusto is ready to take that on. Go ahead, Augusto.
No, I was just going to say I don't have data per se, but I can tell you that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that our community within the Hispanic community is very diverse in its own right, and you know, undocumented Hispanics who start businesses is a big part of our community, and they have specific needs, they have specific circumstances, and again, it's not a one size fits all. So I think serving the needs of each of our segments within the Hispanic community is important. And I think we should shed some light on the value and the impact that for example, this DACA individual who started a company, the impact that they're bringing to the economy as well. But again, we have to understand the unique challenges around what they have to go through to start their companies and to grow and scale them.
Yeah, I just wanted to add briefly, I agree with everything Augusto said. You know, there are 65 million people in the US that consider themselves Latino. More than 80% were born in the US, which means about 20% are first generation immigrant people, and the DACA recipients need a pathway to citizenship. We've been strong champions for that. We believe that the history of this nation, the largest economy in the world, has been ignited and driven by immigrants, people who came here documented or undocumented, and without birth certificates going back to the 15, 16, 1700s. And that includes the majority of those being non-Latino immigrants. And so we are unapologetic to say that we don't create and build enough people in the US organically. We are going to have to fix our immigration challenges and realize that we can't keep growing our economy because of the workforce shortages, as everybody knows, that have been brought about, that already existed before COVID, because our fertility rates are below 2 children per family right now. And also people in the workforce, you know, are needing to cover childcare issues, especially our women leaders in our families and our businesses. So we're gonna have to figure out immigration and realize that immigrants are our friends, or else our economy will become stagnant. and that includes documented or undocumented. And so I'm so glad that question was asked. We just want to let you know we're behind you 150%.
Thank you, Ramiro. We do have one last question from our friend Cindy Ramos Davidson. She said, what is the chance of creating a financial literacy mentoring council for Hispanic businesses at different age levels of their businesses? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, I will talk about something we've done. I'm not going to speak for the broader community, but I'll talk about how we are tackling as NAREP. The way that we see it is that we have 40,000 members across the country. Each of these members are extremely connected and well networked. We talked about Latinos being very good at networking. If you ever talk to any real estate professionals, they know everyone. And one of the ways that we approach this issue is through establishing an initiative called the NAREP 10 initiative, which is the kind of the ethos that we create within our own organization around wealth building. Part of it is the fact that we need to have a mature understanding of wealth. We need to be ready for the next recession and live below our means, because recessions are a part of any normal cycle of the economy. And also things like debt is the biggest enemy to wealth, to also being politically savvy and being philanthropic and doing it all in the name of familia. And so we have an entire curriculum that we do around financial education. And also many of these are business owners that share their perspective about measuring their own net worth and the net worth of their businesses, because you can't improve what you don't measure. So we've created an initiative within our network where we are doing a lot of this mentorship, financial education mentorship within our mentors and out into the community. So that includes schools, that includes churches, that includes social media. It includes just like going into small businesses and giving these presentations. I do think that we got to start with our youth. I mean, there was a comment that I saw earlier about the need to speak to our youth about investing and about using credit wisely. This information cannot happen young enough. And right now, one of the issues that we also face is that Latinos are the least likely to invest in a retirement account. So there is a lot of investment education that needs to happen early on. I think we're all doing our granito de arena, all of these organizations, and I think we just need to keep doing more.
If I may, I think if you want to give one advice to each one of your members or each one of your business owners that you serve, I would tell them to meet their banker. And I know that sounds very simple, but you would be surprised if you ask your small business owners how many of them actually know their banker, and you would be surprised how many don't know. And I think that's key to success as you not only start, but as you grow your company. So go meet your banker.
Great advice, Augusto.
Great advice all across the board. With that being said, we can go ahead and conclude this panel. I want to thank Karen with Hiscox for giving us the opportunity to have this platform and share some very valuable information to our members and participants across the board. We had people coming in from Hawaii watching this, so aloha. Thank you to Arturo, Norena, Augusto, Ramiro, everybody for your time today. Just a reminder, this is being recorded, so it'll be available on YouTube. It is also will be available on Facebook shortly. We appreciate all your time and everything you guys continue to do and the advocacy work that's being done on behalf of our Hispanic community. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Adios.
Thank you so much. Muchas gracias.
Gracias. Adios.